Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy fall day, right? I'm happy that it's cooler. Are you?
Yes.
Cold? No. Anyway, welcome. And welcome to all of those joining us on live stream. I trust you're in a toasty, warm place in your home and comfortable, and you will enjoy being with us this morning. My name's Carolyn, and I'm a member of this congregation and have been for quite a few years. Of course, it's good to be with you today. We take pleasure in greeting our guests, our visitors. I wonder if there are any members who have brought a guest today. Anybody met a visitor that they would like to introduce? Yes, sir.
I have with you this morning Mike and Lisa Older. Mike is the principal at
Welcome.
Welcome, Mike and Elizabeth. Lisa. Hi, Will. Lisa. Okay, thanks. Anybody who's a visitor who is really brave and would love to stand up and share with us your name and where you're from.
I'm Karen, and this is my husband Paul, and we're members of the Unitarian Society of Santa Barbara.
Welcome, Karen and Paul. Welcome. Is there any? Yes, we have someone back here.
Hi, I'm Jay, and this is Amber, and we're members at First Unitarian Church of Dallas, and we're here for the weekend.
Jay and Amber, welcome. Welcome. Anyone else? Well, you're here for a treat today. Lunch is being served in Conover Auditorium, and it benefits the Carver School, right? And our program with Carver. And you'll hear more about that at the offertory time. Everyone's invited. If you're a guest today, please stay. Lunch is on us for you, and you can get better acquainted. I do want to share with you that we have exits that I need to remind you of. There are two at the back. There's one at this door up here, and there's one over here at this door. Oh, in fact, that door squeaks. Did you hear it? Please notice the announcements in your bulletin and on the screen. And know that almost all meetings and events are open to everyone. So we welcome your questions, your comments, your reviews, and your responses to the service on Twitter and on Facebook. Again, good morning.
And again, good morning. And welcome to this gathering, to this centering hour in the midst of fragmented days, to this shared moment of reflection, inviting us to consider again how the lives we lead express the values we affirm. On this National Coming Out Week Sunday, let us call to mind all that we have learned from the examples of our gay, lesbian, transgender, bisexual, and other queer people here in this community and in our families and in our lives. Remember how burdensome are all the secrets that we carry and the fears that separate us from one another. How destructive is the will to conformity that makes sameness the condition for acceptance. Celebrate the courage of those who announce their difference to the world and choose to no longer hide who they are. Say to all who have been made invisible by the world's refusal to acknowledge them, we see you. We welcome you. You make us whole. Say to yourself, I am whole. I am worthy of welcome. I belong here. If you would lift up the presence of the holy in your life, you must be prepared to look beyond the horizon of familiarity and discover the connections of an ever-enlarging humanity. Each one of us has a unique truth to tell, a journey to share that is unlike any other. Each of us longs for companionship and the assurance that we are not alone. Here in this community, we strive to live by our hopes rather than our fears, to answer the summonings of truth and of justice, to create authentic welcome. Let us be present to one another here in the fullness of our being, in beauty and mystery and the possibility of love. In this hope, we now kindle the flame of our chalice, seeking ever greater light and ever deeper dedication to lives of service and joy.
Hello.
Yeah. That'll work better.
Hello, my name is Savannah, and I light this chalice for the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
Thank you, Savannah. Now let's rise as we are able and willing and speak the words of our covenant with one another. Together, whoops, oh, we didn't get the, okay, all right. Can we do it? What do you think? All right, let's try. Is the stern of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in truth, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Beautiful. All right, let's be seated and let our children depart to their classes with song.
Good morning. So, the Welcoming Congregation program was instituted by the Unitarian Universalist Association in 1990 to encourage and support our congregations in their efforts to reach out to the LGBTQ plus community. For those of you who aren't familiar with that acronym, that stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and others. So to reach out to the LGBTQ plus members and those in the larger community. More than 800 UU congregations have been certified as welcoming congregations, All Souls certified in 1993. In recent years, having seen the successful settlement of many gay and lesbian ministerial leaders, and having won the fight for marriage equality in 2015, it had seemed as if this work in the UUA might be complete. While many lesbian and gay UUs have experienced full inclusion, many bisexuals and members of the transgender community continue to struggle for visibility, viability, and inclusion, even in this faith which is lauded as radically inclusive. We are not always as welcoming as we like to think we are. One statistic that supports that is, even though over 800 congregations have certified, that means that almost 300 of our congregations have not yet certified. Many welcoming congregations have not updated or reviewed their LGBTQ plus programs and outreach since the 1990s. In 2015, the UUA unveiled the Welcoming Congregations Renewal Program, stating that to honor your original pledge, it's essential that new people in the congregation understand your congregation's commitment to this work, and that people who were originally involved in the program learn about the current needs and concerns of LGBTQ plus people. Over the past 3 years, 18 welcoming congregations have renewed their certificates. Now, we wish to be bolder with our welcome. Transgender UUs are still struggling to find community in UU congregations. Bisexual UUs suffer from invisibility, while asexual, intersex, and polyamorous communities are wrestling with a progressive faith that often fails to honor their truth. These and the many more social ills that plague our LGBTQ plus and TGQNB, which stands for Two-Spirit, genderqueer, and non-binary communities, are calling us into a deeper commitment to ensure that our Unitarian Universalist congregations are living into the welcome that we boldly proclaim. The welcoming congregation renewal process now consists of 5 benchmarks that every congregation will need to integrate into congregational life each year in order to ensure that lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex, asexual, two-spirit, genderqueer, and non-binary people, as well as any other groups who are not mentioned in this list, feel fully welcomed, centered, and embraced in our Unitarian Universalist communities. In order to remain current as a welcoming congregation, we will need to, 1, be certified as a welcoming congregation. As I mentioned, All Souls has been certified as a welcoming congregation for 23 years now. 25. Math is hard on Sunday mornings. 2, offer at least 2 specifically welcoming worship services on Sunday or at other times. 3, recognize at least 6 out of 12 published days of LGBTQ plus observance, such as National Coming Out Day, which happened last week. 4, offer an educational module to increase the congregation's awareness of current LGBTQ plus issues. And 5, financially support some local, national, or UU organization working for LGBTQ plus communities. We welcome your participation, your questions, and your support in our effort to recertify All Souls as a welcoming congregation. Everyone, please follow the directions of the
Thank you, everybody, for your cooperation and participation. That was, by the way, our best time ever. We had the adults all out of the building in a little over 2 minutes. So well done. And I will tell you that it so happened that our church mutual insurance agent was here in the building on Friday when we were discussing some of the final details. And he was just so amazed and thrilled that we actually did something like a fire drill. I almost thought he was going to give us a discount right on the spot. Almost, right. But it is important for our safety and the safety of our children that we know what to do in these kinds of situations. So thank you. And now we will proceed with the service.
I swear I didn't do that. Yeah. On being erased. Our society is primarily based on a heteronormative, patriarchal system. While this may not seem like a problem to many straight, cisgendered men, it has had serious effects on many of us who are queer or are women. Growing up, any of those who differed from the norms were immediately labeled gay, wrong, etc. I was one of those individuals who detested the gender norms and wanted to be myself. Teachers, school peers, and other individuals were often critical of this and thought it was wise to begin labeling me. Can I just clear the air around bi erasure and biphobia? This affects pansexual and fluid individuals too. I'm sick and tired of hearing from both gay and straight people that I am greedy or in a phase, and I'm gay but too scared to come out fully. Firstly, patriarchal men accept bisexual women because they find it sexually pleasing that they can objectify and watch them hooking up with other women. And secondly, they, including gay men in this part, assume that bisexual men have to be gay, as if everything is about men. The worst is when people try to assume other individuals' sexuality, which is firstly problematic, and secondly, they assume using the binary system, which is that there is only heterosexuality and homosexuality. I'm exhausted with having to prove the existence and validity of my sexuality, and if you still don't believe that bisexuality exists, you are invalidating my being and my person. So many times people will question the validity of others' experiences just because they themselves have not been personally affected. It's okay to question and learn, but to invalidate and disregard the experiences of others just because it is not your own is grossly closed-minded and discriminatory. I've always been critical of the coming out process. When I initially began expressing myself and accepted myself for who I am, I did not come out to individuals. However, I felt like it placed me in a position where I was inferior and I had to wait, fearing that I wasn't going to be accepted by a straight person. Instead, I reassessed the coming out process and feel that this notion should be an empowering experience for the closeted individuals who need to be empowered and encouraged to be who they truly are. I am lucky and privileged to be confident and happy with who I am, but I know there are those who aren't. So to those who feel lost, who feel confused, and need a shoulder to cry on, I am here to support you. We are fighting this unfair system together, and I know we will achieve the complete social, economic, political, legal, and psychological emancipation of all individuals regardless of their sexual orientation, race, gender, sex, religion, and disability.
Mike Coulter is one of the most experienced principals in the city. He's a powerful advocate for kids, powerful advocate for the dual language education model, and he knows all about fire drills.
I think what John said is one of the most experienced. He was trying to be kind and say it's one of the oldest. I do appreciate this opportunity to come and celebrate with you guys the great things that we do with our partnership with the All Souls Church. In the past year, we had really three big things that have gone on. We have volunteers, which has been going on for 10 years. I think we have 17 full-time volunteers. It's a fantastic program. The donations that your church has provided has allowed us to provide field trips that we couldn't have afforded otherwise. One of our things that the district doesn't fund probably as well as they should are the Spanish books, and being a dual language school, that's essential to the way we teach reading at our school, and we bought lots of those books with those funds that you guys have provided. And then not a smaller thing, but a shorter term project. Last year, a group of you got together and planted a native plant garden for us in front of the school that this late summer bloomed out just beautifully. It looks really, really good, and we appreciate that. The benefits of the volunteers, it's not just the time that they spend with the kids working on academics. That's the big thing. And I can think of some great examples when that has helped kids go from being virtually non-readers, even in upper grades, getting that one-on-one help and becoming true readers through that work. But the connections and relationships makes those kids want to come to school. They know there's somebody there they look forward to their Tuesday, Thursday day with a volunteer. Maybe it's 1 day a week. Maybe it's 4 days a week, whatever it is. The students look forward to that. They get excited about it. They want to come to school. And that's a huge help to those kids then learning at school. The other thing that happens is that our staff feels appreciated. The fact that some of you folks come out and help with our students and talk to those teachers, let them know how much you appreciate what we're doing out there, is a big, big help to us as well. John and Peg are kind of the leaders of the volunteer group, but there's lots of volunteers at work, and we really appreciate what they do for us. John asked me to mention a little bit about how dual language education works, what we do at our school. I came to Carver 7 years ago. When I came, this program with your church was already fully going, been going for 3 years at that point. I knew virtually nothing about dual language education when I came. I've learned a huge amount since. But what happens is we're not just a school where you get a Spanish class. A lot of people, even some people in our district, and a lot of people in the community think that, they teach a Spanish class for a half hour twice a week or something. It's not like that. Kindergarten and first grade is almost full immersion in Spanish. So no matter what language a child speaks when they come in, whether it's English, Spanish, French, Mixteco, whatever they might have, they get almost their full day in Spanish and they learn Spanish. Little ones can learn it immediately. It takes me a lot longer. It takes a lot of us a lot longer as they get older, but the little ones can learn it fast. Then starting in the second grade, we start to move more toward a 50-50 program. But when our kids leave, they are truly bilingual and biliterate. It's not just that they can speak a little bit of Spanish. A lot of us had Spanish in high school or elementary school, and we can't speak a bit of it now. Our kids have it, so they really learn it and they know it. Or if they're native Spanish speakers, they've learned English and can do that. And they read and write in it as well as just being able to speak it. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. We get great success with it. Kids actually get smarter overall. The brain develops. We used to think that the intelligence was set. It's not. You can change it. And the fact that you learn a second language develops your brain differently, and our kids actually excel more in all the subjects as they get older. And our program actually, this is going to sound bad, we're the second best kind of program, that's according to the research that's out there. The best program for English language learners is a K-12 dual language program. Unfortunately, in Kansas City, the best we can go is K-6, or Foreign Language Academy, or one of our partner schools is a K-8. So the K-6, the data says that those kids, especially the English language learners, really get a chance to excel through that. So again, I appreciate all the things that a lot of you have done for us, and we appreciate and hope to continue our partnership. Thank you.
I would like to take just a moment to acknowledge the currently active volunteers. They are Bill Rainey, Ginger Powers, Kathy Weil, Jack Heller, Ellie Dawson, Carol Coles, Leanne Gouge, Marilyn Carpenter, Alan Proctor, Jane Wilson, Tina LaBellart, Beth Andes, and Peg and me. Thank you all, volunteers and members, for all you do for Carver.
And with that, our offering for this morning, which will help support the work of Carver, will now be given and received.
I'm going to take a second to pose a question to you. Why does it matter to you whether I am a boy or a girl? And if you think it doesn't, I'm going to really ask you to stop and think. Have you ever come across someone whose gender you just can't place? Have you wanted to know, even if you don't care either way, have you wanted to know what they are? For those of you who say, no, I'm totally comfortable not knowing. I don't use he or she when talking about them. I just treat them as a human without any gender identifiers. Well, that's impressive. It's hard to do. Just try and talk about someone for a minute without using gender terms. It's really difficult. This is Audrey. Audrey is a young person who doesn't identify as any gender. Audrey writes stories and they love writing. Audrey loves writing, not the stories love writing. Whoops. It's hard for all of us. We want to know because of our language, and also, in my experience, it's because we treat men and boys differently to women and girls, and we want to know how to treat them. Sometimes I'm glad that people mistake me for a boy, because I get to have real conversations with people. They ask me about my future, and we talk about what I want to do. Often, when they find out I'm not a boy, they don't know how to treat me. My friends who show more outward signs of being girls often get called things like sweetheart or darling or love. People comment on how pretty they are. My style has evolved drastically since the Star Wars t-shirts and skirts of my early childhood, and I think it has a lot to say about how I now appreciate and consider gender. I've realized that for me, gender is a spectrum. What my gender expression and identity is entirely about me and not about how other people perceive me. I don't know how we deal with that in a world so desperate to define by gender. I'm going to leave you with that same question. Why does it matter to you whether I am a boy or a girl? Or that I am in the wrong bathroom? Does it really matter to you which bathroom I use? Because it does matter to me. Would it hurt you not to know someone's gender? Because despite how uncomfortable it might make you feel, you assuming my gender makes me feel uncomfortable every day. All I'm asking is for you to just sit with that little bit of uncomfortable to make someone else feel better. Because it does matter to me.
Will you now join me?
I'm going to take a second to pose a question to you.
It's worth hearing again. Will you now join me in the words of dedication for our offering? Here we go. Together. We dedicate our offerings, our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create change for a just and compassionate society. So, I inherited part of Davina's library after she took her own life some 3 years ago now. She wasn't around All Souls that much in the time after I arrived here. I met her, but I never got to know her or to hear her story as she herself would have told it. That's a pity because judging by the books she acquired for the seminary classes that she took and the papers she wrote, I'm inclined to think that she and I had a number of ideas in common, at least about the enterprise of religion and the purpose of the church. Davina started life as a boy and later a man. She was part of the first generation for whom sexual reassignment surgery was not a wildly experimental gamble, but a fairly well understood procedure, at least medically. As far as I know, this congregation was always supportive of the way she chose to present herself. After all, if the integrity of your chosen identity isn't accepted in a UU church, you would have to take all our proclamations about diversity and freedom and radical hospitality with a huge question mark. We may never know if Davina in fact was challenged by the ignorance of some individual members as she struggled to live out the truth she experienced about herself. But it seems as though publicly at least we were a fairly safe space for her. She was clear that she wanted her memorial service to be held here. She left detailed instructions, a playlist of songs she wanted us to listen to while remembering her, and a message to be read to us. In that letter, she told us how much she had come to regret having that surgery years before. Not because she wanted to return to life as a cultural male. She did not want that. What she wanted, what she tried to make us understand in her final words, was a world that would have accepted her in the ambiguity of her wholeness. A world where she would not have had to surgically jump out of one box and into another because those were the only two choices available to her. A world that would not have persuaded her that her uneasiness with her own gender identity was her problem, that she and a surgeon could fix, rather than our problem with the way we construct a binary division between male and female and then force all of reality to choose up sides. The trail of our progress in learning to understand what might constitute equity in matters of gender expression and human sexuality is strewn with tragedies like this. We are only beginning to grasp the fluidity of individual experience over against the rigidity of our cultural categories and the expectations that we place upon each other and on ourselves. We have made some progress in that many of us have succeeded in wrapping our minds around the possibility that people of the same gender identity might experience sexual and romantic attraction, leading to enduring and lifelong loving partnerships toward each other. We have begun to challenge the notions that virginity, chastity, and sexual exclusivity are the highest ethical achievements, particularly for women, while sexual exploitation and violence are the inevitable habits in men. We have had to bring both reasoning and compassion to bear upon the unexamined assumptions that we absorbed from the social norms in which we were raised, even those who were aware at some level that our very own identity might not be a good fit within those implicit structures. It is sometimes easier in our own minds to physically change the shape of our bodies than it is to rethink categories as fundamental as the dichotomy between masculine and feminine. During the early years of my work in ministry, the UUA struggled to become actually inclusive of women in leadership roles and of gay and lesbian people as fully part of our congregations and fully recognized as leaders and ministers. Our denominational offices invited congregations to participate in programs of learning and sharing that helped make it possible to see beyond categorical thinking, limited by conventional cultural notions, and truly consider calling a minister who didn't fit the traditional model of a straight male. That process of education had a direct impact on how welcoming we were able to be, to our support for GLBT rights and marriage equality, to the gay and lesbian members already in our churches to be open about who they were, and to the generation of gay and lesbian ministers who were called by their congregations in full awareness of their identities. And nothing bad happened because of that welcome. Today, even as the forces of reaction seek to pull our nation backwards, we are asked to take another set of forward steps. We are asked to renew our commitment to this work of inclusion and to refocus on those letters beyond G and L. We are asked to check ourselves, to wonder about what it is like to be in our UU communities as a bisexual or transsexual person, or as someone who does not fully identify with either of the options in the larger society's division of genders. I cannot speak of this from any firsthand experience of these identities. I'm a straight cisgender woman in a 40-plus year marriage who has always been happy to define myself and be seen as female. But that's okay. Those of us who hold the privilege of conventional identity cannot relegate all the work of advocating inclusion to the folks who don't operate out of that advantage. We need to be about the business of listening, centering, and amplifying those historically silenced voices. So what I want to do this morning is not to put words in anyone's mouth or speak on behalf of those whose stories are their own to tell. Rather, I want to invite all of us to look again, or perhaps for the first time, at our preconceptions and how we might shift our thinking and our feeling responses to move a little more toward inclusion. As we have noted before, this congregation will probably never be a perfectly safe space. I'm not persuaded that such a thing exists, really. But we can make it a space for growing brave, where we practice moving beyond our comfort zones and meeting and knowing each other in ever more deeply true ways. Some of the ways in which we do this are simple, practical shifts in how we talk. Changing old habits of thinking probably happens as much from the practices that we make an effort to do as from any new information or ideas that we get. One step is to stop using binaries, which make it sound like there are only two kinds of people in the world: ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, mothers and fathers. Every time we unthinkingly use these kinds of phrases, people that we know and love feel erased by our culture. People like Audrey, the amazingly articulate bow tie wearing young person we saw on the video earlier. Perhaps someday Audrey will want to change her body or her pronouns. I'll get to that in a minute. But right now, Audrey is fine with the way her body is. She just doesn't find her selfhood reflected in either of the standard genders of our culture. And why should that be a forced choice? Why shouldn't we be fine with Audrey just the way she is? Why should we divide everybody up into sons and daughters and leave Audrey and those who identify likewise out of the picture? It is amazing how the language of even our very liberal religious heritage invites us to do this constantly. So Anthony and I and our readers and our choir members are going to be trying to pay attention to our language so that we don't make people invisible with binary exclusive language anymore. We won't always catch it, even with our best efforts. So I invite you to help us out, all of you. When you hear us talk or read or sing in a way that makes queer people disappear, remind us. And maybe pay a little attention to your own vocabulary too. Another way that our dominant culture makes gender non-conforming people invisible is when we fail to respect the pronouns that people prefer to be used about themselves. It's easy to assume that you know that someone wants to be referred to as he or she, his or hers, because we learn from the time we are little children to recognize the social clues of gender identity and to display them about ourselves. But this is exactly the automatic response that makes anyone who doesn't fit into that conventional binary disappear from our awareness. It is a courtesy of recognition when we let people know for sure the pronouns that each of us wants to use, and when we comply with what others have told us about themselves. Some people choose not to be confined by the traditional options and ask to be referred to as they. As awkward as that can feel at times, try imagining if everyone who didn't know you well and cared deeply about you constantly referred to you with the wrong pronouns. To me, that sounds exhausting, like the constant drip of water that over time wears away the stone. It is precisely by taking the awkwardness of that unfamiliar practice upon ourselves when someone asks that we create a more welcoming congregation for everyone. The implicit binary assumption also shapes our expectations around romantic and sexual attraction. In this respect, it is probably easier to wrap your mind around a person who experiences attraction to other people of their own gender and not to those of the opposite, because that is just the reverse of what is already ingrained in our social structures. At least that person still fits into a certain kind of expected category. But there are many other ways of perceiving and expressing both one's sexuality and one's relational yearnings. The famous science fiction author Octavia Butler attended several gatherings at the gay and lesbian student group while she was in college to explore whether being lesbian might explain her feelings that didn't seem to fit the standard pattern. She was well received there, but soon concluded, no, that's not me either. I'm just a hermit. Other people find that they can be attracted toward partners of either traditional gender, Other factors are more significant to them than that particular facet of identity. That does not make them either inadequately gay or inadequately straight. Doesn't make them inadequate at all. It's just another way of being in the world. The point is not to assume the reality of how someone else sees themselves, but to be ready to receive and honor what they tell us about themselves, even when it doesn't fit into our accustomed ways of dividing things up into what we think we already understand. A quarter of a century ago, this congregation undertook a process of self-assessment and learning that earned us the designation of welcoming congregation from our national association. This year, a new task force will be exploring how we can renew that commitment and broaden that inclusive welcome even further. It is forever a work in progress, and we need your help, your insight, your experiences, your reminders, your openness to new ideas and understandings, to new compassion for those who have been so long discounted and made invisible in our unexamined assumptions. Every time I pick up one of the books that was once Davina's, I am haunted by her final message. Gender confirmation surgery is a life-changing and life-giving option for some people, and blessed be for that. But why should we not, in the end, build a world where you don't have to take a knife to your body as the only way to fit into other people's expectations, to be taken seriously or even seen? Why should this kind of arbitrary conformity be the price of inclusion? It begins, as always, right here, in our own minds and hearts, in our own covenant of community, in our own collective practice of welcome and inclusion. Memory and promise, my friends. The memory of Davina, the promise of Audrey, and of all our queer, beautiful children. The mission of creating change toward a just and compassionate society. Come, we have a world to build. Come. Will you rise and sing with me?
We'll build the land
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fires of commitment. For all these we carry in our minds and hearts until we are together again. And so may the love which overcomes all differences, which heals all wounds, which puts to flight all fears, which reconciles all who are separated, be in us and among us, now and always. So be it.